Alright, so things are back to being me testing like that one bug over and over again. Don't know why anyone would watch this, but if you are, I appreciate it. This very much is one of the was it the last video I might have ended on explaining the God bless you, God bless America way that I now have started jokingly. Oh, shouldn't go this way, should I? Well, I'm already here now. That I started jokingly finishing, jokingly signing off on stuff. If you didn't see that, basically the idea is I was watching a presentation on, well, how to give presentations, and one note made is that finishing on the phrase thank you is just an incredibly weak way to finish, because if you finish on thank you, it's kind of like, well, you know what, this talk wasn't worth your time to come to, so I've actually got to thank you for spending your time on it, because otherwise you'd have had no reason to come. It wasn't worth it. And the suggestion was, see if you can find something else to finish on. And the examples given were, yeah, both from political broadcasts, and both of them, or political speeches, and both of them finished on the phrase, God bless you, God bless America, which I feel I don't necessarily have much call to be saying, as someone who's not a Christian and is recording this from the UK. I mean, I'm not saying I don't. Why did I put that on? Because it would let me get through. Okay, we'll pretend I put the right hat on there. But yeah, it feel like, not that I can't wish that if there is a God exist, for you all to be blessed, and not that I wouldn't necessarily wish America to be, although I think it would be very odd for me to single out America, because if there is a God, I'd quite like he, she, it, them, whatever, to bless everyone. That feels like it'll be kind of good vibes kind of thing to do. But yeah, anyway. However, given this is literally just me testing one bug, trying to build intuition of how it works, trying to understand it better, I feel this is one of the times where I cannot finish on God bless you, God bless America, and should in fact finish on thank you, because no, you are genuinely wasting your time by watching this video, and so like, the reason you don't know, or the suggestion was not to finish on thank you, was because that suggests that what they've watched is a waste of time. Here I would argue it very much is. I mean, no, it's not. So, I mean, again, it depends on. I say again. No, there's no again. I haven't said this once to begin with. But I would say it does depend heavily on context. Because, like, someone, if you're anything like me, you may actually find it quite interesting watching, or trying to work out what's going on with something and trying to, like, build up data. Well, I mean, that's the whole reason I'm doing this to begin with. Yeah. I'm amazed at how little armor these guys have. Given I'm like used to fighting King of Hurl and stuff like that, and doing it with, I guess, typically lower damage weapons, so it always amazes me how quickly the second round of the armor gets taken out. The interesting thing, that did stop me moving into... Oh yeah, okay, so the real challenge right now is, yes, to work out what's going on with the two concurrent things. Also, it would be nice to get some sense of what's actually happening. Yeah, okay, so take a look at that. My momentum doesn't get halted when I ground pound. I just can't do any more inputs. Yeah, I didn't make it that time. Wonder why. And the fact that I can't do any more inputs does... Actually, that felt like it did halt me. There are definitely times where it just looks like it hasn't. Like there, I definitely did keep moving sideways afterwards. Oh, no, I know. Do I know what that is? Is that... Okay, let's... do I probably don't have Value Explorer still up, do I? Let's get that up quickly. Explorer... Objects... Let's get the basic. Let's just double check I can do this with the basic spear. If I can, then I shall, because spear going for the win. Okay, so that works. So then let's get the ID for this. Basic spear. There are 2 basic spears apparently. I'm going to guess the first one, given this comes from an early mission. Okay, and skill tree is loaded. Okay. So as usual, take a look at the standard things. And we see that, okay, again, we do have the 2 air movements. I guess what we should also do is, because we noticed that this, noticed last time that this didn't... I say I need to close a tab. I've got too many tabs open. Okay, we'll close you. Okay. So what we noticed previously is that this didn't work with Sensei Wu's stuff. So what's the difference? I mean, there are lots of other things it also didn't work with, but I only need one of them. Okay. See what happens here. So yeah, just to demonstrate, this is what happens if I do it with the spear. And this is what happens if I do it with Sensei Wu's staff. I get locked in place, the stun continues. Amazing, that's kind of interesting. So wait a second, that's actually... Okay, so that might just be the duration of the stun, which is doing interesting stuff here. So let's just check. So Sensei Wu's staff. Ah, okay. Yeah, okay. The way Sensei Wu's staff works is you have a... is you have like a start to it. Is you have a start of the stun and then an end of the stun. And you don't... Probably because of that, if I had to guess. Yeah, no, maybe not. But for whatever reason, you don't have the air movement, the second air movement linking up. It just starts and is apparently... I don't... okay, nothing's... Okay, this actually tells us a lot. Nothing stops the upwards air movement when I do this. The only thing that could stop it is a timeout, or that does stop it is a time... Well, no, could. Is a timeout after 5,000 milliseconds, so just 5 seconds. However, take a look at this. Still move down. That tells us a whole lot. Because that tells us that what happens is that the first air movement gets overwritten with the second air movement. Otherwise, what would happen is I would... so for this one, I double jump. There's an and statement. It starts the first air movement to lift me up, and I use an attack delay, which waits half a second before it starts moving me down. And from that point, okay, you move down, you get the standard you get stunned, an effect is played, the area of effect is, but note it also ends the previous stun. But the interesting part about all of this is that nowhere here are we actually cancelling that first air movement. That never gets cancelled. But we're clearly not still moving upwards. You can see when I do this that I'm not still moving upwards. So what this means is that when we have the air movement, when one air movement gets overwritten with another air movement, most things are okay. When one is overwritten by the other, most things seem to be overwritten, but for whatever reason, when I go and take the basic spear, so we go into the jump, we get that lifting up air movement and the falling down air movement. Okay, the stun, it's just very useful that they don't use a start-end block for the stun, which is what lets me cancel. Oh, I think this means I can't ground pound cancel with the imagination staff. That's interesting. So, okay, later weapons you can't ground pound cancel with. That's interesting. Where are they? Quick's Prime, okay. But okay, so the weird part about this, right, is the fact that we know one air movement is necessarily being overwritten by the other. And we can see that by looking at the Spinjitzu staff. We don't keep moving upwards afterwards, despite the fact that air movement should still be going. So the air movement gets overwritten, but the triggers associated with it turning off apparently don't. And so that's got to be somewhat key to this. So basically what it triggers when it ends doesn't get removed. So the timer still exists. The timer's still there and is still counting down. Oh. Wait a second, that's kind of cool. This provides a... if you can pull that off, that provides a quick buildless way of getting... not quick buildless, a power-upless way of smashing those guys. It's incredibly niche. But that will work. That's cool. So if anyone ever wants to do hardcore LU but without the power-ups, this mission just became possible, which I think is quite cool. Oh, I was slightly too slow there, or too fast rather. That's actually it's a really cool application of this, I think. It's like arguably it's still completely useless in like most runs you could ever want to do, but you know. Anyway, so the question is, so what we know, so that makes this weirder, right? So we've got, for whatever reason, I guess, I've mentioned this in the past, timeouts, etc. seem to be really solid in the game. And I think this may be a case of them actually being too solid. In that the game is still playing the timeout, even when the air movement has been stopped. So what else do we have about the air movement? Whatever stuff does it do? Lifts you up, has a timeout action, it's a timeout time. Okay, that's basically all it does. It can muck with your gravity. But that evidently also it does muck with your gravity, it turns off gravity. But that also gets stopped. That gets cancelled too. So we know it's not... Or when one air movement ends, when one air movement begins, it overwrites all motion information, but it does not overwrite all the triggers. Okay, so that's a good start. So the question is then, what is different between doing this? So this was the kind of question I left with last time, is what's the difference between me just ground pounding here and me getting hit in the ground pound? What difference does what I'm going to assume is an interrupt? What difference does that make? Also, what happens if I Is it possible to go too early? Because there should be different timings for this. It should be possible because there are two different. So it's something to do with the air movements. Does it? My question is, does it matter when the interrupt occurs? Does it matter if the interrupt occurs during the first air movement or during the second air movement? Does that make a difference? Because for whatever reason, normally the timeouts are. So I think, okay, this is kind of an important point. Normally the timeouts are definitely over. Normally the timeout of one air movement is overwritten by the timeout of the other. Okay, so we know that. So that's what's normally happening. That explains why normally the end actions of one air movement are overwritten by the end actions of the other. That's normal behavior. So then I guess the question is, why does that normal behavior not execute? Why does that overwriting not execute and the timeouts from one air movement continue when we get attacked in the middle, or more specifically in this instance, knocked back? I wonder if this is like an internal. This could literally be like something that, I guess, probably not throwing an exception, but like, well, maybe an exception being tried in court, something like that. Internally, and the game's just trying to handle it as best it can. Because, okay, I guess the question is, what does the interrupt normally do? Oh, interesting. Okay, so we also have some additional behavior. Wait a second. Oh, I have been on a bouncer so far. Okay. So note the air movement is still broken here. We still have something very weird going on with air movement here. It's just that I remain stunned throughout. Because normally what should happen, and I'll demonstrate this briefly, is that the second the minifigure leaves the area that's knocking us back, the air movement should be finished. So for whatever... Oh, okay, maybe this begins to make sense. For whatever reason, when... Yes! Okay! No, this begins to... I don't know all of the details, but it begins to make sense why this kind of bug might exist. Because... Just watch, yeah. Normally, when we come out of one of these things, we keep moving down. Now, we know the air movement isn't playing continuously, because the air movement is in some sense stored, or the motion part of the air movement is in some sense stored, and then played back afterwards. So what I think's probably happening... So yeah, you can see it gets stored until we leave the region that we're being pushed out from. Or maybe it's until a time delay passes, I don't know, I would have to test further. But then the air movement gets continued. It seems more likely to be a time delay than anything else. Just because I'm not consistent, I'm landing in different places. I guess you could work this out in more detail. But okay, so this is really good news. So this is what goes wrong. Or this begins to give us some sense of what goes wrong here. Because what's happening is we're going forward, as we move forward or whatever. Okay, so what happens is, as we move into this area, the game's like, oh, okay, I need to push you back out of this area. Okay, that works, that's fair enough. The game starts pushing me back out. But it knows that in order to prevent me doing weird stuff like like shooting back afterwards and getting like stun locked in a really weird way, it knows, okay, I will also store the current air movement. Oh, so yeah, it is also possible to do that, which I do find quite funny. There is some sort of timing which lets that happen. That may be key to understanding this, I don't know. Some sort of timing, some sort of positioning. I don't know exactly what lets you do that, but just know it happens. But anyway, yeah, so that's got to be the key to this then. So the key to this is the fact that it normally continues playing the air movement afterwards. We prevent it from doing that. Or we don't prevent it from doing that, but we start another air movement along the way. So the other interesting thing is we've got the same effect there. So what is it that makes those long ones happen? So it could be that it's... So note, I know those ones, so we haven't hit the bouncer yet. Hitting the bouncer for whatever reason makes this mistake happen more easily. Don't know why. But I do know that attempts like that, where I actually am getting knocked back all the way, and where the air movement does appear to be completely cancelled. Okay, what if it's just cancelling the existing air movement? Okay. Okay, so note that when doing it with this... Interesting. So note when doing it with this, we do get 2 attacks. That's weird, actually. Why do we get these 2? That doesn't make any sense. Why do we get both attacks there? We shouldn't have 2 attacks. I'm going to do the same thing disconnected from the internet. Get the same result. So it's not the server sending an attack slightly later. Yeah, it's not that. That's not what's happening. Why do we get 2 attacks then? So... The only thing I can think, because we only have 1 air movement. Well, no. So we only have 1 air movement that gets stopped by, like... So what I was assuming is that what was happening is I was being hit, and that was... And, like, the interrupt was causing... I wasn't really focusing on that first attack we normally do. I just assumed that first attack was the downwards air movement happening. But I don't think it is now. I don't think that first attack is the downwards air movement. I think that first attack is the first air movement being cancelled. Because that then... Does that help? No. Well, we can test this. We can test this. It's because the first air movement only... Yeah, okay, it is. It is that first air movement being cancelled. Because the first air movement doesn't trigger an attack on this. Okay, so... When we do this... The first air movement gets cancelled, and the game's like, okay, we've cancelled this. Oh, okay, so this begins to make sense. The game is like, okay, we cancelled that, and therefore, in order to prevent bugs, we're going to want to like start it again, or we're going to want to ensure that anything that is running, like let's say the person's been charging something up or whatever, we're going to want to cancel that right away. We're going to want to make that trigger just because we don't know what stuff might be meant to happen after this. Better be safe than sorry, better call it regardless. So that gets called without there ever being a timeout. So this can override the necessity of timing out, is what's happening. Then we get outside. Okay, so maybe it's not the case that we... So this just cancels the air movement. This cancels that first air movement entirely, or at least it seems to. Then that second air movement... I think maybe we are just waiting out the delay. Yes, so it is a delay, but it's not a delay in the same way I thought. We don't actually... The game doesn't ever restart the original air movement, I don't think. I think we are just awaiting that short delay or whatever... the half-second delay before we attack and ground pound. So what happens then when I do that? What happens when I get that really precise one? So it seems to be that happens right when I get just on the edge of the zone. So there we get a single attack. That I feel like that is, I've gone right on the edge of the zone. That is the attack delay. So we have the half second before the attack delay triggers. And so then the thing which is being cancelled the thing which the game cancels is that downwards motion. Okay, so this explains the normal operation. Okay, this is good. We're finally getting somewhere. This explains normal operation. This explains why we don't see this effect in normal gameplay. That's due to it being overwritten. So now let's use a bouncer. And let's break things. Okay, this is good progress, finally. Okay, I'm going to quickly test this. So, if my suspicion is correct, for whatever reason, using a bouncer means that the game, for whatever reason, no idea why, decides that it wants to save your position. Or decides that it wants to save your air movement and replay it again afterwards. Don't know why it would want to do this. That does seem to be what's happening. So we jump up here, and we now do the same thing. Let's just take a look at what happens. Go up. Okay, we do only get the one attack. Oh, but what happens if we get the... What happens if we get the, like, really precise one? So, okay, so reasoning for this one attack, then... Okay, so it's the second... So what it looks more like is that first attack should still be the first air movement, right? So this second attack, I guess you could double check this from the timeouts, but I mean, it's kind of the only thing that could be happening right now. This second attack is from... So, okay, so for whatever reason, us being hit breaks... What's happening is that we get hit, and this breaks the thing where it checks ground, it checks hit, and it checks hit enemy. So we are overwriting, so it looks like we are definitely overwriting the timeout, or the first air movement. Does the same thing happen? Yes, okay, the same thing also happens here. So what's actually happening is this knockback is somehow breaking the game's detection of when we hit the ground. That's what's happening. I wonder, is this like a single tick ground hit? Is that what's going on? That would kind of make sense. Actually, interesting. Okay. So the thing to look at, I guess, is then look at the double ground pound bouncers. So my theory would then be they work very similarly. So okay, so things that's worth checking. What happens if I get one of the very precise ones? Oh, is that what causes the occasional one where I just don't get the second part of the bug? Yeah, that's it. Okay, so we've got an explanation for those now as well. So that's what happens when they hit me after 0.5 seconds have elapsed. At least that's my working theory for that at the moment, that it could also be something to do with these guys having a... No, it seems that everything holds together too well. So I'm going to go with this model we've been building up here, because that explains a lot of unexplained behaviour, like those times it fails. So okay, so what's really happening is what we found out is, okay, we can trigger something which should happen on timeout. There are other ways that can be triggered. I don't know if that's an interrupt or whatever, but that also lets us trigger exactly the same event. And then we also have the fact that getting hit after having used a bouncer prevents ground detection. And I feel like that's got to be related to the edge case of, okay, what happens if I ground pound on a bouncer? Lots to think about, but finally we're making progress on this bug, which I think is really cool. So, okay, this was actually more hype than I expected this to be, because we've made a good deal of progress. So anyway, thank you all very much for watching. I've been NinjaValue, and because this was successful, well, I guess I've already said thank you very much. But I don't know. I don't have a good equivalent of God bless you. But for me as an atheist, I kind of want to go like, it's just good vibes. Have good vibes, y'all. Bye.